Hey folks, this is Abel James, and I just want to thank you for joining us in the Wild 30 Challenge as we get kicked off here. So many of you have sent in your questions as we get rolling, and I really appreciate that. I just want to thank all of you who have taken the time to ask things that or admit to needing maybe a bit of support or help with certain areas, because even getting over that hump is really important. But keep in mind, I am no guru. We're all here to help each other. We're all students and constantly learning. That should be the goal, especially in this world of misinformation that we find ourselves. Now, let's just get this kicked off because I have so many questions here. Krista says, I have been on Wild 30 for 2 weeks today. Week 1, I lost 3.5 inches. Week 2, I had no change. Why? Well, thank you, Krista, for asking that question. It's a very good one. And this is one that I certainly have some experience in, especially after being on that ABC TV show working with a man named Kurt Morgan, in case you didn't see it, who started off the top of my head at 352 pounds, and I worked with him over the course of the next 3.5 months on the TV show to lose 87 pounds, which is remarkable, but there are a lot of things at play when we're talking about weight loss. And weight loss, let me remind you, is less of a goal, certainly, than fat loss. So when you're talking about weight, there are a lot of things included in that. Human beings are primarily water. So what happens at the beginning of eating wild and living wild when you're turning down the processed carbs, the sugars, the junk foods, and all of the other kind of man-made toxic processed foods, your body starts operating a little bit differently. So from marathon running, when I did that almost a decade ago, I learned a lot about glycogen stores, which is basically the stored sugar in the body. And the body stores glycogen in the liver as well as in the muscles. And with sugar in the body comes added water, retained water. So if you're basically topped up with glycogen and topped up with sugar in your body, you're going to be carrying extra water. Additionally, if you've been eating, kind of anything that is close to the standard American diet, or anything that really includes restaurant foods from most restaurants, there are rare exceptions, farm to table type places, or if you've been eating at basically any place that has pre-prepared, pre-packaged foods, your liver is going to be dealing with a lot of kind of non-food products. And a lot of times the liver can get overloaded. So at the beginning, especially the first week or two, almost without exception, most people lose the most weight in the first week or two. Off the top of my head, Kurt Morgan, who is, a tall guy and a large guy when we started, he lost 15 pounds. And actually, we won the fitness competition as well on that ABC TV show. So the next week, I think it was like he lost 11 pounds. And those were some of the biggest weeks that we had as the process continued over those 3.5 months. So keep in mind that there's so much at play when we're talking about weight that the scale isn't the best measurement of your progress. The best measurement is really the way that it's a combination of things. It's the way that you feel, the way that you look in the mirror. Sometimes you can see your face lose inflammation, which is another thing that happens as you get away from the carbs and the processed foods. The inflammation, the swelling goes down. When I first started, I had kind of a moon-shaped face for a while. When I was medications can do that, so anytime you're turning down the amount of inputs that your liver and your body has to deal with, you're kind of going to get this big flush of mostly water from your system. Now, there are ways to manipulate that, which are not necessarily good. Usually they're not. So in weight loss competitions, in competitive crew, in the Olympics, in bodybuilding circles, in fighting circles, shedding water weight to make weight is a really big thing. So that can be manipulated by how much water is in your body. It doesn't really have anything to do with how much progress you're making. It's always really important to drink a lot of water before you think you're thirsty. In fact, I'm getting a little parched right now. Drink water, a lot of it at the beginning. And so anyway, when it comes to losing weight and losing fat, your target's going to be more like a half pound or a pound of fat, maybe a week. That would be really excellent progress. Now, there's not really a great way for people at home to measure that. So I don't want to dwell on this one, but when it comes to progress, keep in mind, you want to measure it by the way that you feel, the way that you look in the mirror, but even more importantly, the way that your clothes fit. That will start to change. Men might get a little bit more tapered. Women a lot of times are surprised by the curves that sometimes come out when you lose fat from certain areas, or when you start to build muscle and your metabolism starts to change. A lot of people are pleased with the shape that they have, which is closer to kind of like when you were at your high school weight maybe, or when you were involved in athletics or what have you. It's more of an athletic and I hope capable build. And you know, I'm not really going to talk that much about fitness today, because if you want to get in the best shape of your life, you really have to have diet and nutrition nailed first. It's going to be 80% of your progress. So just quickly about fitness, if you're going to do it, make sure that you do enjoy what you're doing. Focus on full body exercises, not like ab rollers and, you know, isolated bicep curls and a lot of work on machines. It's best to do it the good old fashioned way, getting out there, doing sprints, hill sprints, hikes, anything that's using your body in every direction is going to be good for your body, great for your brain. Okay, so moving on to some other questions. What do you recommend for people who hold their stress internally? Well, funny you should ask that, because it's been a really stressful day. We were really looking forward to doing a live question and answer session, as we've done many times before, although not always perfectly, certainly from here. And our internet just completely crapped out. And that's happened many times, and it always kind of bums me out when we have this big buildup and then I'm not able to be there for people who I really want to interact with. But, you know, we live up here in the Rocky Mountains with 8,000 feet of elevation, and, you know, there's a bunch. We're basically snowed in right now. So I am just thankful to be able to interact with you folks in any way. And I have so many questions here that this is really going to be a blast. But right before I started recording this, you know, we had been fighting with the internet, trying our phones, different devices, trying different connections, and all sorts of different things like that. And, you know, I'm getting bummed out because I'm not able to be there live answering the questions for people. And so for me, it's really important to take deep breaths. That's number one, really. You can do that anytime, anywhere you are, just deep breaths. Slow it down a little bit. And I went out in the sun. Fortunately, we live here in Colorado, and we get a heck of a lot of sun up here, even when it is snowy out. And so even though it's pretty cold, I just rolled out there and, you know, probably just 2-3 minutes, and it completely changed my mind. It transformed my mind. So that's what I do if there are kind of peak stress situations, which a lot of times can lead to binge eating. You know, it shows up in a lot of behavior, especially when you're talking about foods. So it is important to keep your stress. I don't want to say stress down, because stress will always go up and down. What you want to be able to do is when it goes up, be able to handle that and ease it back down, hold its hand and walk toward the sunset back down. You don't want to like wrestle with stress. It doesn't quite work like that, at least for me. So another thing that is extremely important is to find kind of your zero point, your point of rest when you're not thinking about anything, you're not doing anything, and time doesn't exist anymore. So for some people, including me, you can get there through meditation, which is excellent for almost everybody. But also, what does that really mean? Depending on how you define meditation, which is definitely trendy right now, it really, to me, especially with some background and interest in Zen, like the best way is just to do nothing for a while. Just do nothing. Being in nature really does help. For me, I'm extremely sensitive to sound, so make sure that your soundscape is working with you or working for you. And if it's not, there are kind of easy ways around that. A lot of people have earbuds these days. Headphones work. You can put on nature sounds in the background. There are a lot of free apps that will do that. Holding your stress internally really does affect the heart. And there have been a few shows I've done on the podcast that have talked about this specifically, where people in high-stress jobs like firefighters, police officers, the military, oftentimes will have heart problems later in life. So it really is important to learn how to manage stress and deal with it. Deep breaths, meditation, music always helps me. Art. What did you love doing? Just ask yourself this. What did you love doing when you were 8 years old or when you were 6 years old? Just like what brings you childlike glee to this day, or what used to that you could kind of do again, maybe. Making sure that you get joy in your life. Also, just kind of practical technological tips. Technology is so intertwined with our lives these days that it is definitely one of our biggest health issues. Turn almost all of your notifications off if you can. So on your phones, on your computers, Apple products are like the worst these days. We're just like, you need to restart. Your restart didn't work. You need to update. You didn't update. So like, if you can, Apple doesn't let you. I understand, but like if you can turn those notifications off, try to. For me on my phone, the only notifications I believe are so I get a notification when someone calls me, especially a family member, or text messages. So I make sure that I don't miss those. But I also don't usually have my phone on me. So try to be away from your phone for at least a portion of the day. Even if it's a small portion of the day, try to do nothing. Make sure your sleep is in order. We can talk about different strategies of how to do that, but Qigong is something that I've been doing for a while, which is kind of like a moving meditation or like a yoga Tai Chi type thing. So moving meditations are wonderful. It wasn't at first, but after doing it for a while, and now for many years, it really, if you don't have just a few minutes a day of doing those exercises, which are mental and physical and somewhat spiritual as well, I really miss them. I really do. And I notice it too. And at the very least, it's a wonderful way to kind of internally massage the organs, move the spine, get things kind of warmed up. And I know for me, that's important every day. Every day before I record, I have this whole warm-up thing that is meant to minimize stress, maximize meaning, and that sounded really prepared. I've never said that before, but it's not meant to be salesy at all. It's a very spiritual type thing, I think, being low stress, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of time. So be nice to yourself. Understand that none of us are perfect, but progress is really what we're all after. So if you're making even a little bit of progress and a stressful thing happens to you today, which it will, try to take that deep breath when it happens and when you catch yourself, and just notice that it's happening and realize that you have a choice for how to react. And as it relates to how you're going to be eating, I know how tempting it is to reach for the wrong thing, especially when you're stressed. But when you're stressed, your hunger cravings are kind of not honest anymore. So, and also when you're not sleeping well, those cravings aren't honest anymore. So food isn't always the answer. So also challenge yourself to see like what is wrong right now? What am I stressed about? And how could I get back to my 0 point where, time doesn't exist anymore. There are no problems, because who knows? A lot of people are saying that this is all a hologram now anyway. So you might as well, if you have the choice, then you might as well find a philosophy that works for you in your own life. And we can obviously talk about that more, and we will. But along those lines, a follow-up question to this is, I have an addictive personality and crave sugar. Once I start, I can't stop. Will green smoothies help with this? So that's a two-part question as I see it. Having an addictive personality and craving sugar once you start, you can't stop. Does kind of put you in a personality category almost. There are people who are moderators, like me. I count myself among them, who can eat like one square of chocolate. And not that it was always like that for me in my life, but at this point, I can kind of do that. My wife, Allison, is kind of less like that. So although it's getting better with time, so she tries to avoid trigger foods. And once you kind of know what those are for you, it makes a massive difference in how much you're eating. Because if you don't have those trigger foods around you, then you're not going to be eating a whole bag or a whole can or a whole pint or a whole whatever of them. So what is a trigger food? The way that I see it is that any food that you eat where the second bite makes you want it more than the first bite, and when you're done, you want it more, and you wish that there were more. Like that's kind of a trigger food. Any food that makes you want to just keep eating and keep eating and keep eating is really, I hate to say it, a trigger food. Now, you don't have to banish all of them from your life forever, and there are trigger foods that can be healthy for you and good to be included in the diet. But what firstly you want to notice is this food making me hungrier as I eat it? Because if it is, the pleasure centers of your brain have been hijacked by food scientists most of the time. And that's by design. In the same way that they want cigarettes to be addictive, or in this case, Juuls and e-cigarettes to be addictive, they make sure that they keep you coming back for more. So in contrast, and I explain this in my book, The Wild Diet, think about when you eat a big old juicy apple. Even though, they're about 100 calories or so, not that really matters, made up mostly of water. But when you eat an apple, and I've done this, it's like we grew up with apple trees. We go to apple orchards and pick our own apples. And man, when you eat one apple, even if it's really good, you don't really want another one, or at least you don't want it as much as the first one. Your body knows when it's eating real food. So try to find the foods that you see included in the wild diet, or as kind of, which I see not as a diet, but more as self-defense, like, and philosophies to follow, principles to follow that will allow you to know whether a food is going to be good for you or not. So, I mean, this is probably the number one thing. Does the food make you hungrier as you eat it? And if it does, try to put it down, reevaluate if you even want to include it in your life. And if you do, that's cool, but realize how to moderate that in some way. Usually through environment. So like, don't keep it around you, or just keep a little bag of it someplace. Anything in moderation, but sometimes you have to trick your mind, the lower impulses of your mind, because if there's Ben and Jerry's in the freezer, your brain knows, and when you're stressed out, it's going to crave it. So avoid those trigger foods. That's really, really important. Now, the second part of that question, will green smoothies help with this? The real answer is it depends. But in my experience, green smoothies, depending on how you do them, have helped almost everybody. Because what it is it's kind of, it's a stand-in for a salad, but it's more convenient for most people. And oftentimes you'll have it in the morning or earlier in the day. And that's great. Just be careful with green smoothies. Don't add too many carbs, sugar, and that sort of thing. I mean, you can really go overboard, especially if you're getting green smoothies that are prepared from supermarkets, from stores, from green smoothie places. Allison and I can't get almost anything at those smoothie places because there are outrageous amounts of sugar. Even in the small sizes, you can find 50, 100 grams of sugar, which is more than a lot of sodas out there, because they pump it up with a lot of tropical fruits like pineapple, mango, anything that's like a tropical, super sugary, sweet fruit is best seen as something to take a bite at a time, really. And if you're trying to avoid sugar, it's a great win to avoid those, at least for a little while, to see how you feel. Grapes can also be really high in sugar, so be careful of even the natural products, like trail mixes and some nuts are sweetened and stuff like that. So if you're just like mowing through carob almonds from the health food store, or something else that's made with real food that's kind of like healthy junk food, just be careful with it. Allow yourself a little bit, but even better, especially if you're trying to get results, don't let it be in your area. Don't let it be in your room. Don't let it be in the places that you're around, and try to minimize your interaction with the things that are hurting you. All right, so let's move on. This is another really interesting question that came in from Trevor. Should I be afraid of the sun? So let's talk about vitamin D and sun exposure for a little bit. I was just reading an article that Trev actually sent to me that it says, and I've looked at some of the statistics, but not in a while, and they're really outrageous. Sun worshippers are actually 8 times less likely to die of melanoma than those who stayed indoors. Tanned people, those who work outdoors, and others actually have lower rates of melanoma than those who are afraid of the sun. So what one of these studies actually says, and this one was published in the Journal of Internal Medicine in 2016, avoidance of sun exposure is a risk factor of a similar magnitude as smoking in terms of life expectancy. What? Isn't that crazy? So I caught wind of this a few years ago, and for quite a few years now, I have been going out in the sun at least for 10 or 15 minutes. It's literally on my to-do list. As many days as I can. And we actually live in a sunny place out here in the West and the Southwest, and we were living in Texas for a while, kind of because of that, because we love the sun. It makes us feel better. Now, you want to avoid sunburn. Sunburn is bad for us. And one of the ways that you do that is you, especially for a pasty person from New Hampshire like me, build up a base a little at a time. And 10, 15 minutes in the actual sun can do great things for the body, the mind, the spirit. It really helped chill me out before I started recording this. In fact, I don't usually do this, but I left this window open so the sun is on me right now. Not necessarily exposed to all of my skin, but just a little bit does a lot for your body and your mind. Now, I don't really see much reason to get more than like 15, 30 minutes of direct sun exposure a day. In fact, we live, like I said, at 8,000 feet up here in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. And so we get like 30% more radiation, give or take, than at sea level, which means you can get a sunburn extremely quickly. When Allison and I were in Peru, we were up at, I think, 11 or 12,000 and got sunburned in 20 or 30 minutes, and it was gnarly. It was a bad sunburn too. And so we were covered up almost all the day. We were at these really cool ruins and stuff like that outside of Machu Picchu, and just got totally baked by the sun, even though we did have hats and we did have some sunscreen. So you do want to be careful about getting too much sun, but try to get a little bit, even if you're not used to it, because there is a lot of data out there saying that sunscreen, in fact, can lead to cancer. And a lot of those cheap sunscreens especially are full of toxins. So one thing that I do is, especially up here at altitude, is put a natural or a zinc-based sunscreen on my nose, ears, neck, and other sensitive areas, because I get sunburn easily, especially in those places, and it's important to avoid that. But even better, light-colored clothing and hats work much better than sunscreen. I definitely prefer them, unless you're swimming or whatever, of course. But also, hats are fun, so have fun with that. But so the sun, vitamin D, these are totally health issues. They do relate to getting progress with fat loss and transforming your body in so many different ways, mostly because they make you feel better. And keeping, getting your rays is good for the morale more than anything else. The sun reduces blood pressure, which we all know intuitively, but science also backs that up. Sun boosts vitamin D, nitric oxide, serotonin, and also endorphins. So it's free. It's a great thing. We all deserve it. It also encourages you to take breaks, which is really important for keeping the stress down. Homo sapiens have been around for over 200,000 years at least. So how did we ever get through the Neolithic era without all of that toxic sunscreen? I'm being sarcastic now. But anyway, yeah, make sure that you don't get sunburned, but also try to get a little bit of sun. It's going to be great for you as we progress here through the year. And I do realize that we're kind of in the dead of winter right now, but that doesn't, you'd be surprised, even in the winter, a little bit of sun hitting your eyes even, not even like if it's too cold to hit your actual body, even when it goes into your eyes, it affects the brain in a positive way. It could even help you sleep better. So don't be afraid of the sun, guys. The sun is definitely our friend. All right, Michelle says, I know we cannot use OS sweeteners. Is Swerve okay? Okay, so what is an OS sweetener, if you don't recall? It's basically anything that ends in OS. But more than that, you want to dial down the sweetness in quite a few foods. So something like Swerve, which off the top of my head, I believe is made with erythritol and sugar alcohols and that sort of thing. A little bit of sugar alcohols I don't think is that big of a deal, especially people seem to like Swerve. I don't know if it's made with like a bunch of GMOs or junk. I don't think so. I'm not sure. But, you know, it can definitely be abused. Xylitol is not good for dogs. If it's that's another sugar alcohol. If it's accidentally eaten by them, it can be a big problem. And for humans, when you're talking about sugar alcohol, it's like getting your sweetness with a little bit of something else, because a lot of people, including me, will get digestive discomfort, especially if you're not used to sugar alcohols. So, you know, one of the you might get gas, or you might be kind of like cramped. You kind of, the way that I see it is you get this little quota, maybe it's a couple of grams, maybe it's a few grams. You can build up a tolerance to it too, but you get this little quota where things are cool, a little bit's fine, it seems. And then you pass that and it's kind of rough. So we've never bought Swerve. We're not huge fans. We tried using sugar alcohols for a while in our recipes, and it can definitely work in some, but these days we hardly use it at all. Also, keep in mind, we don't know that much about the effects of sugar alcohols and sweeteners like that on the gut and the gut bacteria and our microbiome. All these things are extremely important to fat loss, health, you know, your risk of disease later in life. And so it's important to see the body holistically. And Swerve is kind of one of those things where it seems like a lot of people are trying to have their cake and eat it too. So a little bit is probably fine. A dab will do you. But we prefer a little bit of actual sweetness from like dates that are ground up, or, you know, like fruits can do that. A little bit of stevia can do it, but we like to mix sometimes just like a tablespoon or two of honey or maple syrup to get the flavor of the sweetness and just a hint of sweetness. And you'd be really surprised with how little you need, even if it's kind of a big recipe. So Swerve, probably a little bit is okay, but please don't overdo it. Okay. This one is from Jazzy. Does anyone incorporate a cheat meal in a week? I feel like when I have one, I can't get back on track. Yeah, that is definitely a big one. So I don't even like the word cheat meal. Words are close to my heart, though, and easily abused. But the way that I like to think about it is more of a free meal. Like, eat freely and don't worry about it. Don't try to track it in your mind. Give yourself a little break. But also like, be reasonable. You can break any tiny little, I don't see these as rules, more as principles, but like, you know when you're doing yourself a solid and when you're not. So cheat meals, no, if it's not, if you feel like you can't get back on track after a cheat meal, then do your best not to really do it. Or if it's like, if everyone's getting pizza, just like have a slice instead of trying to fill up on pizza. There are other ways to fill up. Fasting also is something that I do a lot. Pretty much every day. And I've told a lot of folks this for the past 7+ years. I've been fasting, and not strictly fasting, like because I'm drinking coffee with some fat in it and that sort of thing. But until around 2 or 3 p.m., sometimes even later than that in the afternoon. And then my last meal will be around 6 or 7, maybe 8 in the evening. And so that can be, not that it's useful to like, have a cheat meal and then fast after that. I wouldn't really recommend it that way. But when you do incorporate fasting even a little bit into your routine, which doesn't work for everybody, but does work for some, then you can color outside the lines a little bit with your evening meal. And that's how Allison and I both have been able to do it. So don't see it as like having to force a free meal or force a cheat meal or anything like that, whatever you call it. It doesn't really matter. But, I would encourage you to, like, what are the foods that really matter to you? Ask yourself that. Like, what are the things where it's like, I will never give up my X or Y or whatever. Make sure that you're finding a way to eat delicious foods. Really important. Allison and I, especially Allison, has come up with so many ways of getting those favorite foods, like some of mine: chicken parmesan, chocolate chip or chocolate cookies, brownies, a lot of breads, like pumpkin breads and pies and things like that. There are ways to make almost all of these foods, including pizza and nachos and all of the things that Americans typically eat. There are ways to make that. No, it won't taste the same as Taco Bell and as, a lot of the restaurant foods that are pumped up with almost everything imaginable that's bad for you. But there are ways to reconnect with your body, reconnect with intuitive eating, and nourish yourself at the same time. So what are your favorite foods? Make sure that you're finding a way to get into it. And so I would challenge you, Jazzy, to find a way to incorporate maybe a free meal that you cook once a week or once a month or whatever. That's a really fun way to, number one, know what you're eating and kind of like learn a little bit about nutrition. As your number two, learning how to cook and make foods and concoct things in the kitchen, which is really becoming a lost art. A lot of people don't know how to cook, and it's so easy, especially because you can do no-bake options for a lot of desserts as well. So make sure you're checking out the membership area, fatburningman.com, for all of our recipes and that sort of thing, to look up some treats and see how you might be able to make them with real food. That is so important. Okay. This one's from Elaine. Why is it necessary to take so many vitamins when the diet includes lots of vegetables, etc.? That is a very good question that I've answered before, but you could always talk about it in different ways. I'll start with, we don't live in a perfect world, unfortunately. If we did, then vegetables would have all the nutrients that they're supposed to have being grown in a natural world. Unfortunately, even if we're talking organic farms, especially on a large scale, a lot of them will still use pesticides. It only has to be 95% organic, whatever that means in a lot of cases. The soil, though, is one of the biggest problems because even if we're talking, like the Whole Foods / Amazon or health food store vegetables, a lot of them are grown in kind of a monocrop type way. Just this one thing and a heck of a lot of it, and it's regrown. And the soil on Earth has many fewer nutrients and many fewer minerals in it than it did just a few generations ago. With the population expansion, the reduction in the natural world, with the pollution that's coming down from the skies, there's a lot that plants have going against them, even though they are healthy foods. So, in particular, magnesium is one that has really been stripped from a lot of the soils. If you think about it, an intact natural soil is kind of like your gut microbiome. It's very sensitive and can be disrupted, especially if it's like all rooted up and all of these foreign substances and pesticides are in it. It can really mess with the natural things that are going on there. But that's, one of the reasons a carrot is healthy for you is because of the probiotics that are naturally on a carrot that's grown in real soil. So anyway, even if it says that it's organic, even if it says that it's perfect, the foods and the veg and the fruits that we're eating today have many fewer nutrients in them than they used to. And so there are also certain nutrients that the body does not make or doesn't really have on a daily basis. Like certain nutrients, the body's cool with just getting every once in a while. And then there are other nutrients, like specifically vitamin D or D3. As I see it, vitamin C, magnesium, certainly omegas and a spectrum of omegas, probiotics. These are all things that are important to get in your diet almost any way that you can. The problem is it's really hard to get like B12 from specific vegetables, even if they're supposed to have them. So selenium is in Brazil nuts, for example, except when you look at Brazil nuts, that are in the bulk bin, even at a health food store, a lot of them are rancid or moldy, and the amount of selenium that is in some Brazil nuts grown in one part of the world compared to Brazil nuts grown somewhere else, or at a different freshness level, or whether they were frozen or not, they'll have different amounts of selenium and other nutrients in them. So not every carrot is equal. Not every nut has the same amount of nutrients in it, even if, you Google it and it says like, well, Brazil nuts are high in selenium. So it doesn't always work like that. So it's important to, as I see it, make sure that we're topped up on the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals that science and experience has showed us is important. And, our understanding, and I'm talking about like mankind or humankind here, is not perfect. Science does not have this nailed by any means. But there are certain things that we know, or at least hope are true about health, and we just have to do the best that we can. So I like keeping up on the vitamins and minerals that I told you. And it is really important to get them from foods, but it's like, that's why I eat oysters and sardines. Even it's like sometimes the most healthful and nutritious sources of foods, like liver, aren't the most palatable. So keep that in mind too. There are different ways of getting your nutrients, and kind of shameless plug, I guess, but we really do believe in this. Future Greens is like a whole food supplement that we sell that you can throw into water and such. So even if you're going to have a multivitamin, and that's another question that came in for recommendations of multivitamins, like try to get them from whole food based things. But I don't take a multivitamin. I haven't for a while. I have done some genetic testing, and certain forms of vitamins that are commonly in multivitamins specifically don't work well with my body from what we understand. So I don't necessarily have a good recommendation for multivitamins, but I would say if you're interested in it, make sure that you're not buying supplements from Amazon. A lot of those have been scammed, and I can't tell you how many scams, like even, oh geez. Anyway, don't buy health supplements from Amazon. If you can, find a brand that you believe in that has the ingredients in it that they say they have, that's a fair price and that you believe in, and order direct from them if you can, like from their own website or from their own store. Just find a brand that you believe in, and keep your ears open to the new developments that come out. But also we know so much about the body right now and so little at the same time. It's important to always be learning and be gentle with yourself. It's okay not to be right all of the time. But anyway, as a rambling answer to that question, multivitamins, like vitamins are definitely, scurvy's a real thing, like not getting your vitamins can be a serious problem for people. So do make sure that you're eating and consuming a nutrient-dense diet in any way that you can. And real food is always going to be better than supplements, especially if they're synthetic, because the human body doesn't really work like that. It doesn't really take one thing at a time, and then that one thing has an effect. It's much more complicated. So yeah, make sure your diet is clean, and a lot of times you can get great results just from kicking out all of the junk, because There are a ton of junk supplements and pharmaceuticals out there, and if you eliminate some of those from, if you're able to, from your daily routine, then that can ease up on the liver, and then your body just starts working like it should be, and your hunger pangs might be a bit better. Like once you're, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but there is kind of like this threshold that your body passes where fasting feels better or more okay. You feel a little bit more hearty. You can go longer throughout the day. You feel a little bit sharper. And so I do think an important part of that certainly is topping up the different vitamin and mineral needs. And I don't really have time to get into that, but certainly any vitamin or mineral that you're interested in, go to fatburningman.com and just type it into the search bar, because I've recorded over 250 shows with various experts and doctors, practitioners, researchers that you can listen to for free. And I talk about a lot of these vitamins and minerals in particular. All right, this question is from Elaine. What is the total number of carbs per day on the wild diet? Sometimes I get tired of meat and would like to have beans. Can you eat beans on the 30-day plan? All right, Elaine. So honestly, I have not counted my own carbs in a very long time, in many years. I've written a few books when I did do a lot of experiments, especially when I was running a lot in marathoning, tracking the various foods and nutrients I was getting in. But at the same time, that can be a stressful way to think about it. So to answer your question, if you really want an answer, number one, net carbs are the most important thing. You want to avoid sugar, certainly more than you want to avoid carbs. So, beans aren't just carbs. They're also protein. They're also fiber. And I would say that Allison and I eat beans in various ways a few times a week. So don't be afraid of beans, but do be afraid of low quality beans coming in like a Taco Bell taco, right? Like don't let that be your excuse to eat poor quality foods. But beans, especially if you're not as into eating meats, then they can be a great source of protein. I find beans quite filling. And there are a whole lot of different kinds of beans and legumes to fill up on. So yeah, don't worry about it. Have fun. I would say, fewer than 100 grams of carbs a day, somewhere around there if you were really counting. But try to keep the sugar, it's like I try to keep the sugar almost as low as possible. Lower than 10 or 20 grams a day. I mean, more than that, and that's easier said than done. But it's like if I'm eating tomato or carrots with sugar in them, I don't really worry about that ever, But I do know it's important to know which foods are high in sugar, even if they're good ones. But a great rule to follow is if it tastes sweet, it's probably high in sugar. So have a little bit of it, enjoy it, and keep in mind the different flavors from your foods, that whole spectrum contains different polyphenols, bioflavonoids, different nutrients, and you want that whole colorful spectrum of veggies and fruits in that order. So don't be too concerned with counting. In the same way that you don't want to be too concerned with the scale. It's really important to focus on healing your mind at the same time that you're healing your body, because this is all about the long haul. All right, another question that came in from Michelle. Here's a question for you, Abel. You mentioned in your book that your mom's an author and herbalist. Are her books available anywhere? Well, Michelle, the short answer is yes. I think you can still find her book, which is about herbal medicine and how to incorporate it into clinical practice. You can find copies on Amazon. I have a copy here in the house, but I also have the digital copy, and I believe my mom has rights to it. So we've talked about maybe putting it out there, and if there's enough interest from folks like you, then we certainly will, hopefully, with her cooperation and a bit of work as well. But we're all seeing each other in a few weeks. We'll be playing a bunch of music together and reminiscing about time. So I'll ask her and also say that you're interested. But you can probably find a used copy on some sort of used book website. Just type it in and search for it. Her name is Angela Bascom. All right, so time for one or two more here. This one's from Gracie. Hi, I'm wondering about stevia. I use a good quality organic dropper, but can I overuse it? Can it interfere with me losing the last 10 pounds? Gracie, I dig that question because I was kind of cool with it until the end where you asked, can it interfere with me losing the last 10 pounds? I would say yes, it probably can. Now, what are the mechanisms of that? No one is quite sure, but even stevia obviously is extremely sweet. That's why people use it. And sweetness, it does something to your brain. It does something to your body. It does something to your brain. A lot of times it can set off cravings. So for that reason, there are, like no sugar, really sweet drinks that are available. I'm thinking like Stevia and some of those other ones. They're like sodas and stuff that are really high in sugar, alcohols, or some sort of other sweetener like stevia. A little bit is going to be fine, I think. But yes, I would say you can have too much. And Allison and I, especially when we were experimenting with different sweeteners as we made all these desserts, it's like, that's too much, or man, I'm hungry now and I don't feel like I should be, or I wouldn't normally if I hadn't eaten this thing with so much stevia in it. And especially when you're talking about drinks, like if you can kick the sweetness out of your drinks, that is such a huge win. Because keep in mind, for hundreds of thousands of years, humans were basically drinking only water or some sort of, like tea with a plant in it. And so we're drinking and eating a whole lot of things that are completely unprecedented. And if you're looking, like normally, if you had 50 or 100 pounds to lose, I'd say don't worry about it. Just kind of make yourself happy and make sure that you're eating healthful foods, even if you do have to use the stevia. But if you're talking about the last 10 pounds, that's when the little things really start to matter. I had Gary Taubes on my Fat Burning Man show many years ago now at this point. But he said all of a sudden he gained 10, 20 pounds and he couldn't lose it again and didn't know what to do. And he tried taking the heavy cream out of his coffee in the morning. And just a few months later, pretty much all came off. And so, if maybe that dropper of stevia is kicking off cravings that mean you eat an extra 100, 200, 300 calories that day of some other food later, there's not a good way to measure that, but that totally could be happening. I know that I've intuitively thought that might be happening to me in certain cases. So I would say if you think that stevia may be a culprit, then try just dialing it down or even kicking it out for a while and see if that makes it a bit easier to lose those last 10 pounds. Okay, I think we got one more here. And this is a great question, especially to end with. Brian asks, after a 3-day trip to New York City, where I ingested my fair share of commercial food, should I just return to my faithful plan and let it do its thing? Or is there something I might do to kickstart the cleanup? Yeah, that's something that happens all the time, Brian. No worries. Everyone goes on 3-day trips from time to time where they, really don't have much option than to eat commercial food, processed food, and that sort of thing. Well, okay, there is something you can do to kickstart the cleanup, and that is like get prepared to go on your next trip, especially if you travel monthly or weekly or something like that. Pack up your bag with foods that you'll be eating and have them available. So it's not always the most palatable thing, but you can definitely eat well, even if you're talking about food that you don't have to cook. So, when we go on road trips, we'll take crackers that are made out of real food. A lot of times they'll kind of have like some sort of veggie base or flax or something real food, not starchy or sugary or covered in MSG or too salty or anything like that. We'll bring some seaweed chips, which are kind of fun. We'll bring some nuts, of course. We'll make a gorp or a trail mix. What else do we bring? Allison is really the one who is wonderful preparing so much food when we go on trips. But whether you're flying or going in the car, there are so many different options. What else do I bring? Sardines or oysters or pates, or even, like Greek dolmas, which are grape leaves in olive oil, wrapped up or wrapping up some rice. Just wonderful foods can be brought with you almost anywhere. And so we kind of have like this whole chocolate, of course. We have this whole plan, basically, anytime we go anywhere, to bring those foods along the next time so that you're not cornered into eating a whole bunch of commercial food. But okay, so number one, what can you do to kickstart the cleanup? Go back to your healthy eating habits. Don't worry about it. Don't think that you have to fast for 3 days or go on a treadmill and run for 2 hours. Chill. It's cool. It happens to everybody, and our bodies adapt to whatever happens most of the time, not what happens every once in a while. So every once in a while, no big deal. Worry about what's happening every day. Worry about your daily habits that are kind of invisible. Make sure that if you really want to clean up, get your veg on first. Make sure that 50% of your plate is basically a salad or the smoothie equivalent, where it's mostly green veg. You got some protein, you got colorful vegetables all over the place, maybe some nuts to add some bulk and fiber, some healthy fats. Avocado is definitely one that we like getting in there. Fill up on those real foods, get a high quality source of protein, and just when you go shopping, make sure that you're that much cleaner. Make it a challenge for yourself to be like, all right, well, how much can I get a handle of my health in the next month or two? It has to be a priority for you. It really does. But always focus on those things that are happening kind of automatically in the morning, whether you're adding sugar to your coffee or having that Starbucks latte, or that every time there's a birthday in the office or whatever, you get to eat those treats. It's examine those various things that are happening that might be that 3-day trip to New York City in your real life, and try to see if you can dial those down in your daily habits, such that when you have that 3-day trip every once in a while, you can let loose a little bit, have some fun, and not worry about it. Because really, even think about 3 days in a month, you're talking 10%. And even if you go hog wild for that 10%, if you're on point for that 90%, it'll barely even matter. Think about it like a workout, or think about it like anything else in life. But be reasonable, work on your own intuition. And I'm just about out of time, but I want to thank you all once more for sending in all of your questions as we kick off this Wild 30 challenge. And I'll definitely be answering more questions throughout the next few weeks and certainly months ahead. We're in this for the long haul. So once again, this is Abel James. And if you or anyone in your family, if you're already in the challenge, this is another question that came up. Someone joined the Wild 30 challenge, and they're just like, well, we're a family, and there are 2 of us. It's a husband and wife, and we want to know if we can just pay for one challenge. And yes, totally. Just like when you buy any of our digital products, share it with your family. Share it with your friends. Now, be reasonable though. I mean, if you want other people to get involved with this and really join our community, and there are a lot of exciting announcements coming out about that soon, then share fatburningman.com with them. Share the Wild 30 challenge. Get them involved. The Fat Burning Tribe is our membership area where we provide 24/7 support all over the world. I've been running that for 6 or 7 years now, and there are a lot of improvements coming soon. So make sure that you're doing what you can to help those who are interested in health around you find their way to it, because we're all part of this together. We need your help, and that's why I really appreciate all these questions, and I appreciate you joining in the fun here. This is how we pay the bills, and this is also what we choose to do because it provides so much meaning in our lives. And Allison and I very much thank you, and we look forward to hearing your other questions. Don't be shy. Just type in Abel at fatburningman.com. Let me know how you're doing, and we'll be in touch. This is Abel signing off. We'll see you next time. This episode is brought to you by listeners like you and Future Greens. You may know that I'm not a big fan of most supplements. It's hard to know if you're getting what you paid for. And even worse, many supplements, juices, powders, and greens we've tried taste terrible. For example, have you ever noticed that most powdered vegetable mixes taste like fish tank? Don't even mention fish oil supplements. Once you've had fish burps, it's hard to trust that brand again. So that's why Allison and I have spent the last 3+ years creating wild superfoods. And it's our goal to give you the very best nutrition the world has to offer. Now you can get the concentrated nutrition of 15 organic fruits and vegetables plus 6 other superfoods in one extremely convenient, ready-to-go package. We call it Future Greens. And if you're looking to improve your health, performance, and well-being by doubling your intake of fruits and veggies without the sugar and carbs, you're going to love it. With Future Greens, you can whip up your daily green drink in less than 30 seconds, no matter where you are. The certified organic stevia gives it a subtle sweetness and it tastes great in water or juice, and we think it even makes our green smoothies taste a whole lot better. It's made with certified organic, non-GMO fruits and vegetables to aid in detoxification, balance your body's pH, and give you a boost of clean energy without sugar, caffeine, or the dreaded crash. No junk or artificial sweeteners, and just 1 gram of sugar per serving. With the tasty wild berry flavor, you and your kids won't even realize you're eating broccoli and 20+ powerhouse fruits, veggies, and adaptogens. So if you want to try our brand new creation from Wild Superfoods called Future Greens, we have even better news for you. As a listener of Fat Burning Man, and it's proof that you are because you're listening right now, you can actually get a 20% discount to try Future Greens yourself. Just visit fatburningman.com/greens to get 20% off when you select subscribe and save. Once again, just visit fatburningman.com/greens to check out Future Greens and get your special listener deal. We'll see you there. Well, hey there, listener. This is Abel one more time, and I just want to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Fat Burning Man Show. If you liked it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you might be listening to or watching this show right now. And if you have a second, please leave me a quick review for the Fat Burning Man Show. I read every single one of them, and every time you leave a review, it gives us a little boost in the rankings, and that helps other people find this show. And if you can think of someone else who might enjoy and benefit from this free show, please take a second to share it with a friend or a family member. And if they're like, what is this Fat Burning Man thing? That's a really silly name. You could be like, you're right, but here's the deal. We've recorded over 250 episodes of the Fat Burning Man Show with thought leaders in health from all over the world. And so far, we've won 4 awards, hitting #1 in health in more than 8 countries internationally. We have more than 30 million downloads already, but we're just getting started. I can't believe any of this, by the way, and couldn't do any of this without you, so thanks once again. But here's some more good news. You can download and listen to every single episode of the Fat Burning Man Show for free with 0 outside advertisements, no outside sponsors, and no corporate overlords. All you have to do is type in fatburningman.com. I'll give you a second here just to type it in, fatburningman.com. And you'll get all the show notes, transcripts, and video and audio versions for all the past episodes of the Fat Burning Man Show for free. Better yet, enter your email at fatburningman.com, sign up for my newsletter, and I'll even send you a quick start guide so you can take your health into your own hands right now, along with a few of our ridiculously tasty recipes as a special thanks for signing up. Once again, just go to fatburningman.com right now, enter your best email to get your free goodies with a bonus surprise straight to your inbox. This is Abel James signing off. Thank you so much for listening once again, and have a great week.